Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. It is Tuesday, December 2nd, and we have a lot to discuss on the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from Rumble, live on Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, every podcast platform you can imagine. And of course, we're so thankful for TJ, who is producing the show today. We're also on YouTube, Substack, Facebook, a lot of platforms there, and completely independent, not left, not right, just the news every day, right down the middle, straight up, no chaser. And yeah, everyone's crazy. I mean, we're run by crazy people. I don't know what to tell all of you today. A lot of headlines to hit. War with Venezuela. Now that so much is falling apart here in the United States of America, particularly with the economy, par for the course for our government to try to engage us in yet another quagmire. But everyone's talking about war with Venezuela, and there's a lot. We're not going to get into it too deeply today, but the war drums are banging. Glenn Beck talking about Venezuela now being a terror state. I'm getting flashbacks of weapons of mass destruction. And I put a poll out on my Twitter page asking people, are we okay with another war abroad? And yeah, it's pretty obvious what the American people's temperature is on that. It's a very, very, very clear, oh, hell no. But you never know what these crazy people are going to do, and they'll involve our kids. So we are going to discuss that a little bit today. Also, Josh Hawley now leading another bipartisan push for a national digital ID using children as the cover. He wants to protect the children. Therefore, every one of us has to get a national biometric digital ID to usher us into the surveillance state. This guy is now joining up with Democrats to push this through. This has been a multi-year endeavor for Josh Hawley. He started this around 2019, and we're going to have to continue to resist any attempts, whether it's at a state level or a federal level, to get us all on that digital ID. So we'll take a look at that as well. And then in just about 15 minutes, we're going to bring in our guest for today. I am so pumped to interview Alex Zeck. He is an amazing medical freedom warrior, but also freedom warrior in general, and embraces so many of the principles that we have been promoting here in our community for freedom advocates. Not only did Alec get it right during COVID, he is getting it right now as he courageously stands up and calls out Donald Trump, RFK, and MAHA, the movement, for their absolute refusal to acknowledge the death and destruction stemming from the pandemic scam and the military countermeasures during and after the lockdowns of 2020. We still haven't had a reckoning. And that's how I found Alec a few months ago. I mean, I had seen him and seen a lot of his tweets during the lockdowns, but he really began to stand out to me a few months ago when so many of our friends in the medical freedom community, those voices that were out there standing up for the truth about the shots and the lockdowns and the masking, you name it, once they became political, once Bobby Kennedy Jr. joined up with the Trump administration and headed to HHS, those voices became silent and now complicit in the refusal to acknowledge the democide and the tragedies of 2020, 2021, and 2022. And that's just not acceptable for me. There were precious few voices out there, and you've met a lot of them on the Shannon Joy Show. Alex Zeck's voice is one of those, and I can't wait to talk to him in just about 10 minutes. He also has an amazing background, wealth of experience, and you guys are just going to love him. So we're going to hit a couple of the headlines for today before we get to Alex. I do want to say hello to all of you on the live chat. CM1968 is the very first live chatter on Rumble. Great to see you. If you're watching on Rumble, please give us a thumbs up. Feel free to join us on the live chat or post a comment. That helps us to grow. And I love seeing new voices on that live chat. So if you're brand new to the SJ show, give us a thumbs up and say hello in the live chat. I'll make sure to say hello back to you. Opossum King, great to see you on the live chat. And CM1968, am I the first to say, or I am the first to say, why does Trump say he wants to go to war with Venezuela? My guess is because of all the terrible, terrible, very bad news about the economy. That's right. We need a distraction, among other things. Wars are very profitable for the war machine and the tech billionaires, Palantir, all of the entities that have purchased the presidency of the United States of America, Donald Trump, enjoy a good war. It makes them a lot of money, creates a great distraction, and will also help usher in a lot of the disastrous plans that they have for 26 and 27, particularly the technocracy run by the techno-fascists, the digital ID, and the digital prison. Also, the moving of the American population onto a digital currency, whether it's a central banking digital currency, private banking digital currency, Tether, stablecoin, Bitcoin, you name it, it is controllable, surveillable, and confiscatable by the federal government and the techno-fascists who run things. And they want that. That gives them the ultimate control over every human. If you control their money, you can control everything about them. And that's what they want, right? What are the key elements? Digital ID, the digital currency, and mass surveillance. So that is the apparatus that they're building using all of the data that they're collecting and storing and processing in the massive data centers that they're building across the country. It's all very, very bad, right? But we know what their agenda is for 26 and 27. It's our job to stand up at the local level independently and reject their plans. Kristi Noem out there again, pushing for the digital IDs in the airports. And we have this push by, and this is the biggest news of the day I think I want to hit, is Josh Hawley with a bipartisan push for nationwide digital ID, only he's using the children in order to push it through. So we're going to hit that first, and then we will save the discussion on Venezuela for when we bring Alex Zeck in, because he's actually a really great source to have on today. He served as an Army captain in the U.S. military after graduating the military academy at West Point, where he earned a BS in systems engineering. So I'm very interested in what he has to say about that. And we have an idea of where Alex Zeck is going to land. He tweeted this out, and I agree 100%. Trump received approximately $96 million from oil and gas companies and executives during his 2024 campaign. Venezuela holds approximately 303 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, the largest oil reserves in the world, likely worth trillions. And China currently controls it through economic relationships with Venezuela. So if you think that Trump posturing towards war with Venezuela is about stopping the drug traffickers, you are as high as a kite, says Alex Zeck. The State Department's 2025 International Narcotics Control Strategy report explicitly states that Mexico is the only significant source of fentanyl impacting the U.S. There we go. Weapons of mass destruction all over again. So that's what Alex Zeck had to say about war with Venezuela. So we're going to talk about that with him and other things in just about 10 minutes. But I do want to alert you to what the GOP is up to, along with their Democrat counterparts. Remember, we are bipartisan in our critique and irritation of the political parties, Democrats and Republicans. And often, for the most awful things, they will work together. So we're going to talk about their push for digital ID, but I do want to say hello to a couple more of you on the live chat. We have Zen Woman, who has joined us today. Hey, Zen Woman, great to see you. Hey, Lupine, love seeing you on the live chat as well. LT Oracle of Truth is with us. Great to see you as well. Buskman and Strident Conservative Holly has always been and always will be a big government nationalist. 100%. Hey, Beach Hawk 874, great to see you. General Patton is with us. Did you guys see the video of Michael Dell and his wife? They are announcing a $6.25 billion donation from him and his wife, Susan, to Invest America to seed $250 in children's accounts for 25 million U.S. children under 10. This is part of the Trump accounts. This is a 2025 federal policy under Trump. And yeah, that's the video. Listen, this is why I say I need a priest and a psychologist to analyze the news every day, because these people are crazy. Let's run this first. I need to get this off my chest. TJ, let's start with this one. There is a scam here. What we need to understand first and foremost is there is no such thing as a free lunch. And what we should have learned from billionaires like George Soros and Bill Gates, it's that they always have an angle, they always have an agenda, and they're never giving anything away. So you need to have all of your warning bells going off right now when they offer to give your child $250. I can assure you there are many, many strings attached. But you know what? You don't even have to look into it, because just look at the video that they put out that they seem quite proud of, that is going viral now, not because of the largesse of their donation to American school children, but because they look so damn crazy. Let's roll the tape, TJ.
This is really exciting.
Absolutely. It's a very special moment. We're making a $6.25 billion investment in America's kids through our charitable funds.
Next year, every American child will be able to get an investment account powered by Invest America.
We've seen what happens when a child gets even a small financial head start. Their world expands.
The real power of these accounts is that anyone can contribute. Parents, relatives, friends, everyone can help shape a child's future.
To philanthropists, companies, community leaders, if you want to be part of something truly meaningful for our kids, for our communities, for our country, join us.
And to parents and caregivers, stay tuned and get ready to activate your child's account. Every contribution can grow over the years, just like your child.
Together, we can make possibility something every child can count on.
And that's a future worth investing in.
Who are these people? What was that? What did I just see? This is why I say, the people running things in this country are crazy. They actually looked at that video, that woman with the eyes, the eyebrows, she's got Betty Davis eyes, said Edgar 615. And great point, Mr. Worthless Eater. They're actually going to tokenize everything and tokenize our children. Warning, parents, believe me, this is not free. This is another example of the public-private partnerships, the government-corporate partnerships, aka fascism. All right, if you want a technical definition of what this is and what we're seeing, right? This is the coming together and the merging of big corporate and big government. And I assure all of you, it is not for your benefit or the benefit of your children. Again, no such thing as a free lunch. And yeah, these people are crazy. They're crazy. They thought that looked great. They actually put that out. They probably are watching it. Oh, this looks great. It was crazy. Yeah, Travis Cut. So $250 for every kid. Michael Dell, probably a big funder of the Trump campaign. And now they're going to get a payout, because I think that the Trump accounts, President Trump, they're going to establish a tax-advantaged investment vehicle for minors powered by Invest America, a nonprofit enabling family, community, and corporate deposits. This is crazy. Everything is purchased. Everything is purchased. And they want to purchase our kids. Yeah, let's not let them. I do need to alert you to this as well, though. Josh Hawley is now also using the children to launch a major push at the federal level for a digital ID. So let's roll this tape. He's just rolling this out. Josh Hawley has been a sponsor or co-sponsor or author of multiple bills starting in 2019. He's had 5 attempts at this. 2023, the COSA bill, the Mature Act of February 2023, COPPA 2.0 was in 2024, and now a new AI regulation proposal that he's pimping with Democrats that would require age verification and a digital ID for AI chatbots to prevent access by children under the age of 18. So he's, saying that he wants to protect the kids from AI, but we all know this is just a Trojan horse for mandatory digital IDs, either for the children or for everyone else, right? So in order to verify that a child is 18 or a child is, or that someone is over 18, you have to have a uniform system of verification. That is what these types of bills put in place. And it's absolutely a major push for digital ID. Big tech wins, privacy dies. And we're going to have to, luckily he hasn't been able to get very far with any of these. But this was Josh Hawley. He pushed out this promotional video on Twitter yesterday. Go ahead and run that tape.
The legislation that we are introducing today is very simple. It just says this, that no AI chatbot companion should be targeted at children who are younger than 18 years of age.
Time is not on our side. Lives are being lost.
It's a rare issue sparking bipartisanship.
It's about money. It's about profit.
They see a revenue stream and, buddy, they are going for it, even if it ruins the lives of our children.
Garcia says she'll continue to advocate for government oversight.
They're not going to take the steps unless someone forces them to take the steps to put in the proper guardrails. So I do believe it is the government's job to step in and do that, to step in and protect the most vulnerable in our society, which are our children.
An important reminder, and if you or anyone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts, help is always available. Check out the number on your screen. You can dial 988.
And so, yes, yet another push for the digital ID. And yes, Deep Doo-Doo, I see you. Child's biometric digital ID to access the internet will be carried over into adulthood. Absolutely. This is, and it had, Dick Durbin, Blackburn, Josh Hawley. Obviously, this is another push, and we're just going to have to push back against this as well. They use the children. Problem, reaction, solution every single time. You can make sure that you are policing predators online and anywhere without requiring every citizen in the United States of America and child to submit to a nationwide mandatory biometric digital ID. Okay, so this is Roblox is doing the same thing, and that's why we won't be using Roblox in the Shannon Joy household at all. We can talk about all of these things with our next guest, who's going to be joining us in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break. If you are not following Alex Zeck on Instagram or on Twitter, you need to start following him right now, because he is at the tip of the spear on a lot of these issues, the issues that we cover every day on the Shannon Joy Show. And I'm really, really pumped to introduce to you another advocate, another voice for truth out there, another source of information that is outside of the two-party political system. His handle is at Alec_Zeck. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram. And when we come back from a quick commercial break, we're going to bring him into the Joy virtual studio to talk about his experience, the growth of his show, his podcast, and his opinions about a lot of the things that are facing citizens today in the United States of America. We truly are being threatened with a massive loss of liberty, one that dwarfs even what we saw in 2020 and in years before with pieces of legislation like the Patriot Act. So we need to be vigilant. Alex Zeck is one of those watchmen on the tower, and we're going to be talking to him when we come back on the Shannon Joy Show. So make sure you keep it tuned right here. We'll be back. rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. That is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. Amazing sponsors of the Shannon Joy Show. And with Rocket Dollar, you can move a portion of your retirement out of the government to Wall Street controlled stock market and into private investments, physical gold and silver, and or real estate, which is what I love about Rocket Dollar. I just did an interview last week with Henry Yoshida. You just saw on that commercial that we ran, but this is from Technocracy. Patrick Wood wrote this. Even the tech billionaires at this point know that the AI bubble is about to burst. And he says that AI is the mother of all the bubbles. And when it pops, the explosion will take out most of the AI companies, all of their suppliers, writes Patrick Wood. Work will stop on half-finished AI data centers. Others will be shuttered because there will be no money to maintain them. When corporations realize that the ROI on billions of dollars invested never materialize, many will collapse under their own weight. And when that happens, as you all know, 30 to 40% of the entire value of the stock market is in the Magnificent Seven, those 7 tech companies. If you are not diversified out of the traditional retirement funds that are featured in the 401ks and IRAs, you are at risk. It's not just gold and silver, physical gold and silver, but they also have real estate, private equity, private corporations, even crypto, if you're interested in crypto, which I am not, but they give you that option as well. So go to rocketdollar.com/joy. That is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy.
Hey guys, Justin here with the Satellite Phone Store, and right now I'm in London at the Tower Bridge. So something that has been notorious for years in Europe and London is pickpocketers. But the thing is, today, they aren't just physically taking your things, they are taking them digitally. So in order to protect yourself from something like that, it's really important to have something like one of these Faraday bags. This is our escape zone, small Faraday bag. And the way that it works is that when I put my devices, like my phone, my cards inside this Faraday bag, it protects all your digital information from getting stolen. So what's happening are these guys are coming by with a little scanner and they're taking your cards. They're able to unlock your phone and access all your information, including your banking information, change your passwords on you. So this is a great way to protect yourself from that type of foul use. Another thing that this also does protect you from is electromagnetic frequencies, and those can and have been proven to actually cause health problems. So having a bag, a Faraday bag like this to put your devices in at night or when you're walking or when you have it close to your body is another reason to have a Faraday bag, protect yourself from those harmful radiation. And if you don't want to be tracked by companies like Google or whatever, this is another thing that will prevent that from happening. So visit Satellite Phone Store to explore our product line and find out more information about these Faraday bags.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. We are so thankful for our sponsors over at the Satellite Phone Store. Think of them for all of your holiday gift giving this season. Go to sat123.com/joy. That's sat123.com/joy. Right now, 10% off everything you purchase when you use the JOY promo code. They have stocking stuffers, small gifts, big gifts. You can give the gift of preparedness using our friends over at the Satellite Phone Store. So make sure you check them out. And don't forget to use that promo code JOY for an extra 10% off. Without further ado, let us welcome into the Joy Virtual Studio for the very first time, and I'm really pumped about this interview, Alex Zeck. He is an American podcaster, speaker, writer, and health freedom advocate. He's a husband. He's a dad. He's the host of the Way Forward podcast. You can find it on Apple, YouTube, Twitter, Substack. His biggest following is on Instagram, but I came to know him on Twitter. His handle is at Alec_Zeck. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show, Alec. I am so glad that you could join us today and thankful for your voice. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a lot to talk to today, but I thought we could start with just giving you a good amount of time to introduce yourself to the audience. You were a critical voice during the dark days of COVID lockdowns, the rollout of Operation Warp Speed, and the COVID shots. You stood up, spoke out, and alerted people to the dangers of the shots, among other things. And most importantly, and what really made me stand up and take notice of you, it was your willingness to stick to that truth, even after we had a political contest that installed President Donald Trump into the presidency of the United States of America, and who we thought was a medical freedom warrior and our champion, Bobby Kennedy Jr. People from our community seem to go to sleep. And now there are very few voices out there who are continuing to tell the truth and also continuing to try to hold this administration accountable for what they did to us, among other things. So your voice is incredibly important. I love giving my audience great resources besides myself. And you're one of those truth tellers today. So I appreciate you and would like to just give you an opportunity to take some time to introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll get into the news of the day after that. Sound good?
Sounds great. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can, but I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I have 3 kids. My wife and I have been together since we were 16, so we kind of grew up together. And my wife actually played an instrumental role in my awakening, so to speak. And when I was graduating from West Point, so I went to United States Military Academy at West Point. What I like to call now is the world's preeminent government indoctrination camp. I'm grateful for it in many ways, but that's what I think of it now. I definitely have different opinions on government and the military, et cetera. But right when I was about to graduate from West Point, up until that point, my mom had been under the care of multiple psychiatrists for a variety of mental health related stuff due to some trauma that she had experienced in her relationship with my dad. And we were actually looking at permanently institutionalizing her because over the course of nearly 10 years under the care of multiple psychiatrists, her health state continued to get worse and worse and worse. And as a last resort effort, she was seeing a therapist who recommended a book called A Mind of Your Own by Dr. Kelly Brogan. At that time, had you looked up Dr. Kelly Brogan on Google, you would have found that she's a pseudoscientific quack that spreads misinformation online. And Kelly still had a practice in New York State at the time, and I happened to be graduating from West Point, which of course is in New York State as well. So as a last resort sort of effort to see if something else could help my mom, we made an appointment to go see Kelly. And in a matter of 3 to 4 months, just after adopting a very holistic, natural approach to health, making sure she stayed off all of her psychotropic medications, she was on multiple benzodiazepines and SSRIs, my mom's health began to turn around drastically for the first time in nearly 10 years. And so after seeing that happen with my mom, we decided with my wife to try the same thing with her. So for context, in roughly 2005, 2006, my wife was diagnosed with multiple autoimmune conditions. And so the entire time that we had been dating since 2008, she had been suffering with multiple autoimmune conditions, lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. And under the care of multiple rheumatologists, she was told repeatedly that she would always feel this way. She'd have to manage her symptoms with immunosuppressive drugs. She was on a host of medications for this, which led to side effects, which led to more drugs. After seeing my mom begin to take steps to heal naturally, we decided to try the same approach with my wife. And in a matter of a few months, she was feeling better than she had ever felt. And we decided to make an appointment to go see her rheumatologist. And she gets her blood work done. And her blood work comes back and her inflammation levels are normal for the first time since she had been seeing rheumatologists. And the rheumatologist comes in during the appointment and says, all right, well, whatever drugs we have you on seem to be working. Your ESR, your inflammation levels in your blood are normal. So let's just stay with those. And we, alerted him that we're actually not using any of the drugs anymore. We actually followed the recommendations of this so-called pseudoscientific quack. Obviously we didn't say that, but that's like in the back of our mind because any allopathic expert back then, and I would say it's the same case now as, Dr. Kelly Brogan, she was on the disinformation dozen. So one of the top 12 anti-vaxxers spreading quote unquote disinformation. Right. And so we alerted her rheumatologist that she had healed by adopting an approach that's the complete opposite of what he recommended. And there was no intellectual curiosity at that point, no further inquiry, no questions, nothing, just sort of a shoulder shrug, and was like, all right, looks like you don't need me. And I majored in systems engineering in college, and I have a decent proficiency at the time in reading scientific material. And so after seeing these two real world experiences, I started doing a deep dive on all things pharmaceuticals. And then we got pregnant with our first son in just after that. And then that, of course, led to questioning vaccines, because we realized they were lying about psychotropic medications, nutrition, and things like this. And the rest is history. So the whole COVID charade happened in 2020, and I could see it very clearly from the very beginning. And I actually made a video that, funny enough, I never ended up putting out on social media because I never planned to do what I'm doing right now. But I made a video that I found on my phone later in February of 2020. And I look like I'm like 15 years younger. I don't know if like stress got to me, whatever it is, but I was still an Army officer at the time.
Yeah.
Had obviously clean shaven because I was still in the Army. And in the video, I say, this will no doubt be used for mandatory vaccines for all people. This is going to be pretty bad. This is going to result in crazy lockdowns. And that was before any discussions of masking, lockdowns, or anything like that. And before really the mainstream media was picking up on any of this stuff. And so I could just see it very clearly. And by the time May-ish came around of 2020, I just felt so compelled to speak, despite being a captain in the Army at the time. I knew that I had only 1 year left on my minimum 5-year contract with the Army. So it's still very risky to speak out, but I started speaking out, just sharing my perspective on social media. Whereas before I was just like posting pictures of my family and things like this, and just had friends and acquaintances and family members following me. And my account started to just grow, and it felt natural to start a podcast after that. So that's what I did. And it's now expanded into this. And this is kind of, I guess, what I do now. I followed the proverbial bouncing ball, as my friend Dr. Larry Pilevsky likes to say. I don't know how I ended up here, but I did. And I'm grateful for this position. I'm grateful to be able to share my perspective on social media and on my podcast and speaking at events and things like this. And let me backtrack a little bit. So I was in this program in the Army called the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program, which allows you to play a sport full time as your job in the Army. So I've never served in combat, which I'm incredibly grateful for. The reason I bring this up is because when I was in the World Class Athlete Program, my job was just to train as an athlete. So as I had already started going down these various rabbit holes related to the pharmaceutical industry and health and things like this, I had all the time in the world from 2017 through 2019 to just research on my own. I wasn't at a military duty station. I was stationed at the Olympic Training Center in Auburn, Alabama, that is now shut down. I was playing the sport that I play, handball, professionally in Germany. So I was able to just research. I was separate from the herd, so to speak. And once I opened up that door or went down some of those rabbit holes, the rabbit holes became never ending. And then it's definitely colored my perspective on government and the illusion of authority, as Larkin Rose calls it, and a variety of other things. And so again, by the time 2020 came around, I already knew that I wanted to get out of the Army, but I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And this just sort of naturally fell in my lap, and I'm really grateful for it. So that's a very brief, summarized history for how I got here.
No, I find that to be so important to take a look at the ebbs and flows of someone's life and their life experiences, so that you can understand where they come to their positions and where they come to, their platforms. And so that, I love that story. It makes so much sense to me. And so many of the things that you talked about, I can relate to. Having 3 children, for me, my awakening moment came after 2 vaccine injuries. My children, when they were 5 and 2 years old, my daughter and my son. And that kind of changed my entire world. And at the same time, I was launching the Shannon Joy Show. So for the first time, it was a full-time endeavor. And my job was to analyze the news and to research independently. Prior to that, I had been, a red-blooded Republican voter, listened to Rush Limbaugh every day, and the Dems were bad and the Republicans were good and all of the things. And that smacked me right in the face, just in the first year of actually watching, researching, and really testing their rhetoric in campaign years against what they actually achieved from a policy standpoint in the years when they're in office. And what you find is a pattern that repeats over and over and over. And it is one of betrayal. And so I came to my revelation, right, about 2 years in, and it throws you down that rabbit hole, and it does make you question everything. Obviously, like you, during COVID in 2020, I knew pretty early. I had already done my deep dive on vaccines. I was already very engaged in New York State for vaccine awareness and informed consent, and advocating for parents of vaccine injured kids. So 2020 was pretty easy for me, but it was, for the rest of the country, horrifying. And so, a lot of the things that you cover, and I appreciate your interviews are so interesting and the people you choose are so interesting. Can you tell us a little bit before we get into, I would like to talk about, you mentioned something about a belief in authority and voluntarism. I'd like to ask you about that. And then also, one of the more controversial areas and positions that you take is about a rejection of germ theory. And that, I'm really interested in that. So I definitely want to explore that with you. But can you just give this audience an idea of what you do every day with your podcast, where they can find you, the kind of guests that you interview, and how they can become a part of your platform and your organization? Because I think that's pretty important to give people those elements.
Yeah, absolutely. So I release 6 podcast episodes a month, and I like to say that my podcast is overwhelmingly focused on individual and collective solutions. So we cover a variety of things, whether it's physical health, spirituality itself, philosophy of science, philosophy of politics and authority, a variety of conversations. And I interview some pretty incredible guests here in this studio. Actually, would love to have you on, as we talked before. At some point, it'd be really cool to interview you here in the studio. Really grateful for what I do. And my podcast somehow has evolved to be one of the top 0.5% of all audio podcasts in the world, which is wild to say, but I'm really grateful for it. You can also find it on YouTube and, of course, our website. With our platform, I really would like to share this because I put out a poll on my social media accounts on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. I don't call it X. On Twitter, on Instagram.
Same. I love that so much. Okay. I knew it. I knew we were simpatico.
Yeah. Not a fan of calling it X. It's funny, under Jack Dorsey, even though I was deplatformed from Twitter under Jack Dorsey, my engagement, despite having like 1/4 of the audience that I have now, was much higher than it is now. And I was saying basically the same stuff that I've been saying the whole time. So it's really interesting.
Wow.
Free speech platform, right? In air quotes. Anyway, so I put out a poll on various social media channels, basically saying, so you found your health and freedom community online. Are you struggling to find your health and freedom community in person? Guess how many people, or what percentage of people responded that they're struggling to find their like-minded health and freedom community in person?
90 in the 90s.
95%. 95%. Yeah.
Yep.
So what our platform does, first off, it's a platform behind a private membership association that requires that you sign an agreement, and we in order to come into the private membership association on our platform, because we want to protect the people that are on our platform from being doxxed or having any infiltrators or things like this. And on the platform, it allows you to type in your zip or postal code, fully optional. You don't have to do this, but it allows you to type in your zip or postal code, set a custom radius wherever you are across the world, and easily locate like-minded men and women near you, but also like-minded practitioners of all types, anything from biofield tuning to naturopathy to chiropractic to massage therapy. Also allows you to find restaurants. We've just added that as a second category. Also alternative schools near you, anything from Montessori to homeschool co-op, and then also farms near you, anything from an organic regeneratively raised meat farm to fruits and vegetables to a biodynamic farm. So we like to say that our platform is evolving to be the go-to resource for the health and freedom movement to connect people in person. It is great that we have found each other virtually. That's incredible, but we're glued to these platforms. What happens when we don't feel validated by the people in person is that we unfortunately pick up these devices and turned to these as a replacement for community. But on these devices, we're also fed perpetual fear by the algorithms, perpetual fear. And there's some real stuff to be concerned about with respect to what's going on in the world right now. Don't get me wrong. But in order to actually begin to form solutions to those problems, I think we need to cut off or minimize our willingness to turn to the digital world and come back to being the analog versions of ourselves. So it's really been incredible to have members from across the world share that they found each other on the platform. They're doing meetups. They're doing small events across the world. We've had people in Chicago. We've had people in New York State, actually. We've had people in California. We've had people in Brisbane, Australia, send us pictures of them finding each other on the platform, finding new businesses on the platform. So we want this to evolve to be the go-to resource for the health and freedom community across the world to help us connect with each other in person, which I think is vitally important these days. So shameless plug for my platform. I just think it's incredibly important right now.
I love that you are doing that. The fear algorithm is pervasive. It is ubiquitous throughout all of the social media platforms, Facebook, Insta, Twitter, you name it. We know that it sells, it generates negative emotions, hatred, division. I talk constantly about how, these entities in media and politics have been able to divide our country mainly by D versus R, but black, white, rich, poor, male, female, you name it. It's always a divisive technique, and it's always rooted in fear. And when they have us fearful and they have us unprepared, that is when we're the most vulnerable to any of the nasty things that they want to do. So this is one of the reasons that I so relate to you and your worldview. I'm obsessed with localism, obsessed. I have organizations in my own hometown. I'm the kind of girl, I'm going to go out, I'm going to protest, I'm going to have meetings and summits and organize with people physically in proximity of me. That's always been really, really important. And I agree with you 100%. The more connected you are in an analog way, in a human way to people in your community, the less likely we are, or the less vulnerable we are to global, national, and government or corporate interventions. It keeps us strong. So I'm thrilled. So not a shameless plug. I want to give people those type of resources. And so we can learn about that in a little bit. So let's talk about, you mentioned a belief in authority, and I want to explore that with you. Your worldview is rooted in something called voluntarism, I think. I'm not sure if it's
voluntarism or anarcho-capitalism. Sometimes it's called anarchism or anarchy. I think that
sounds scary,
a lot of people,
super scary.
Right, exactly. And that's the problem. That's the problem with using that term. Right?
Yeah.
It conjures up imagery of people looting and burning in the streets and things like this. So
yeah. Well, can you tell us about that and that philosophy?
Yeah. So I'll share that I really am almost shameful to admit this, that when I graduated from West Point, I was definitely left-leaning. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. I've never voted in my life, which I am proud to say, but I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. And seeing how the DNC sort of captured the vote away from Bernie Sanders and towards Hillary Clinton woke me up to the problems with at least the DNC at that time. And again, I had never voted, but I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. And he said a lot of things at that time, I can't believe I'm even saying this, that I liked, which I completely reject at this point. But
it's okay. Okay. We were all there. Like I told you. Yeah. I was on the other side. It's okay.
Yeah. For me, so then I started waking up to the problems with the pharmaceutical industry and things like this. And I noticed that a lot of the blue states had some of the most authoritarian policies with respect to vaccines and things like this. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, they're supposed to be the progressive side that is like accepting of everyone and almost more liberty leaning in that sense, where I viewed the right as more authoritarian. And then I started leaning more right, but that didn't sit right with me either. Around 2020, I started exploring okay, well, maybe it's the Republican side of things. And then I started talking to some friends of mine who had campaigned for or were involved with a campaign of Ron Paul in his presidential campaign against Mitt Romney. And they said the same exact thing that happened to Bernie Sanders happened to Ron Paul back then. And I'm talking like multiple people independent of each other. I'm like, maybe this is a systemic problem. And then I started briefly exploring like, okay, well, maybe I've been wrong about Trump this whole time. Let's see what happens throughout COVID. And simply setting aside preconceived ideas, setting aside this left-right paradigm, I looked at the real world actions of the Trump administration during the COVID era. Expediting the rollout of 5G, 1.
That's right.
Operation Warp Speed, 2. One of the big ones that people don't realize is that Trump is the one who nominated Scott Gottlieb as commissioner of the FDA from 2017 through 2019. Scott Gottlieb, while commissioner of the FDA, expedited the approval process of experimental drugs and therapeutics. That's one of the things that he did while commissioner of the FDA. Scott Gottlieb leaves the FDA, joins Pfizer's board, where Pfizer then has a product expedited in its approval process.
Of course.
So as I'm looking at all these things, which I think your audience probably knows at this point, I'm like, this is not adding up. And then I find that Trump was publicly calling out vaccine autism connection back in 2011, 2012, 2013 on Twitter and elsewhere multiple times, talking about it openly.
I remember.
And then suddenly he's calling himself the father of the vaccine, encouraging his followers to get it. And yes, people say, well, he didn't mandate it, but he's the one who helped expedite it being rolled out and is encouraging his followers to get it repeatedly, praising ventilators, things like this. So as I started to look at the real world results of Trump being a so-called freedom fighter, and I explored like, you know, the Out of Shadows documentary and started looking into the Q and QAnon stuff. And I'm like, okay, I found out about Operation Trust from the Soviet Union. I'm like, this seems to be identical to that, to capture the people who are otherwise freedom oriented and believe that there's a group of quote unquote white hats that are conspiring behind the scenes to save us. And don't get me wrong, am I of the mindset that there aren't people in government who are conspiring for positive things? Yes, but irrespective of that, what I came to when I started looking into the illusion of authority, which we'll talk about now, voluntarism, is that even if the government operates as they claim that it operates, it is still fundamentally immoral. And you can bring this down to the personal level. Let's say we had a tribe of 150 people located in one place living together in community, right? And I took it upon myself to find this thief that has been running rampant amongst the community that no one has caught. So I find the thief and I throw him in my basement. Okay, great. I've just done a service to my community. But then I go door to door to the rest of the community and I say, hey, you need to pay me to protect you. But the people in the community are like, well, I don't feel threatened. Like I have an arsenal of guns. I have locks and cameras on my house. I don't feel the need to be protected. Well, you're going to pay me to protect you, or I'm going to throw you in my basement too.
Okay. Yeah.
And then further, unless you pay for these services that other people need in the community, I'm going to throw you in my basement. If you and you're on your own property decide that you want to do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to throw you in my basement. Now, on an individual moral level, does that sound good? Does that sound like a moral position?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
And there's some other conversations to be had regarding how we are organized as society and whether we are meant to have some form of governance at the level of 330 million people. That's another conversation. I would argue that it's not. There's a number, I think it's called the Dunbar number, where that's why I use the 150 example, because the Dunbar number is basically saying that we are only meant to know and interact with 150 people in our immediate vicinity, which is, again, why it's important to be hyper-local. But the point is, I started analyzing these axioms in the philosophy that I had come to accept up to that point with respect to government. And I found that government in its current conception, even if it works as they claim that it works, is fundamentally immoral. It is immoral for one subset of the population to use the mechanisms of government to abdicate responsibility away from themselves to others. You think it's wrong to force your beliefs on others, but I think it is morally okay to hire someone else, quote unquote, elect, vote for someone else to do those things on my behalf, to impose my beliefs upon everyone else. And when I started looking into this, I was like, okay, we can discuss all the conspiracies surrounding whether our votes actually count and things like this. And I have some thoughts on that. But even if they do count, the way that this is going is fundamentally immoral, and it's exacerbated by the divide and conquer strategies that are very clearly happening. And the political division is getting worse and worse now, where people overwhelmingly, I would say that I appreciate that a lot of people who did vote for Trump are now really holding him accountable and are like, this is not what we voted for. But what we've seen up to this point is people completely overlook the corruption that is plaguing their quote unquote political side. And the whole platform of the candidate on their side is oriented towards pointing out all the things that the other side is doing. And no one is holding them accountable and are constantly just turning and pointing fingers at the other side. And this is what we get. We get what we have right now perpetually. And why it really bothers me with respect to Trump specifically is because between 2020 and 2024, so many health and freedom-minded people were beginning to explore developing alternative systems, parallel systems.
Yeah,
we're beginning to look into private membership associations and different ways to organize society at the, local and really the collective level, right? But then Trump comes along again with a lot of promises, and then brings RFK along with him, capturing the health freedom crowd.
That's
where
right.
A lot of people who are looking into some of these things are now no longer looking into them and have fallen right back into the illusion of authority. They were beginning to reject authority. And the reason this is a big deal to me is it all goes back to belief. It's stated that government obtains authority through consent of the governed. People were beginning to withdraw their consent en masse.
That's right. Yep. Yes,
and
they were.
They re-engaged, gave their consent again because of these false promises. And we're seeing that very clearly now. And I understand that a lot of people that have woken up to this have become black-pilled, which means that they're like, it's all doom and gloom. We're all screwed. There's a lot of sketchy things happening. But in my opinion, it all comes back to our belief. Quite literally, like if you took 10 million people and let's say they woke up tomorrow and all of the conditioned belief and authority was just out of their minds. That would never happen, but let's just pretend that it did, that it no longer existed within their psyche. What mechanism would the government have to stop 10 million people across the United States?
None whatsoever.
None.
Yeah.
None.
None.
Zero mechanism.
None.
And then by forming alternative systems and parallel societies that are more attractive than the current, under the current umbrella of the system, those people that are agents of the state, which I used to be myself, I was an agent of the state. If I see something that is more attractive than what I am currently doing, I'll leave what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, this is way better. I'm going to go join them. But what I see overwhelmingly right now, and I sort of understand it because people are really feeling disenfranchised and really, really demoralized by this whole Trump situation, is people black-pilled, feeling helpless and hopeless, like we're all screwed, instead of focusing on what can we do now that we realize this is not the solution. And it's not another third-party candidate. It's not another alternative candidate. That's what you see a lot of people doing. All right, now Thomas Massey's going to run. Let's vote for him.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Or Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to end up running.
Right.
Exactly. And instead of exploring the foundational premises regarding the way government currently operates and whether that is the best way, because what it would take is a bunch of people, I would say even just a small portion of the population, to dissolve that belief and then act accordingly. And people will say, well, what are you recommending that we do? What is your actual tangible solution? Okay. Your actions and inactions in this world, your words, are predicated and colored by your beliefs, thoughts, and feelings.
Right.
So when you fundamentally dissolve a current belief system, you on your own accord will come to understand what is the best action for you individually. And when we start doing this in local communities, you will come to the conclusion that the solutions will arise once you've dissolved that beliefs, because your actions are predicated on your belief system, on your thoughts
Right.
and your feelings. So when you dissolve that belief system, the solutions will come about.
Right. For me, it's like an efficiency thing. We spend so much time and energy and money and our, thought on elections every 4 year, whether we're blue or red, the sign in the lawn, who's going to win, what are they going to say in the debates, what are they, you know what I mean? It's like all of this energy that is spent on an illusion of a choice where both of the parties are equal. And I've said to my audience often, if you do lesser of two evils for a long enough period of time, you end up with just plain evil. That's why this doesn't work. And I think that's why things are so weird right now and awful, because I think we have descended to a point of where the lesser of two evils is just decrepit and corrupt, and both political parties. What I'm hearing from you, and it does, there are a couple of things that I think of as I listen, and brilliant analysis, by the way. Thank you. I think you are spot on. It is a progression, right? We are built up to be either a Democrat or Republican. So you have a red hat or a blue hat, right? And the red pill or blue pill happens when people realize that the party that they've grown up trusting their entire life is completely corrupt, and they betray their promises. Well, then people are necessarily thrown into the arms of another lover, right? If it's not the right, well, then it must be the left. It must be Bernie Sanders who's going to save me, right? Because we are conditioned to obey authority, and we're conditioned to believe that this system is somehow valid and legitimate. And so then you go into, you're blue pilled or red pilled, and then you realize that they're corrupt too, and that's not solution. And so then, of course, you move to the black pill, where it's all corrupt. We can't trust our elections. Even if we did trust the election, we have false choices because they all work together anyway. By the way, this is why I am boycotting the 2028 electoral contest officially. I voted in every election, Alec. And to your point, I announced this about a month ago, that I am withdrawing my consent from the electoral process. The national elections, I'm not doing it. You are free to engage if you would like. I am still likely going to vote in my local elections. Maybe I'm a dummy for that too, but I am going to stay.
No, I would say that there's some nuance when it comes to local elections. I would.
Yeah.
Because you can see the real world implications happen in real time in your local community.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, but that's my position, and that's going to be my firm position through the election cycle. But that black pill though, and this is where I hope people can get to in terms of the black pilling. Yes, it is sad. You feel demoralized. You feel terrible. You're like, there are no solutions, but you can't get to the white pill until you take the black pill, right? And the white pill, I think, is what you're talking about. It is actually emancipating from these government systems and realizing that it's really your four walls. The majority of what you engage in is going to be in your own community, with your own family, the people who are your neighbors. And if we allow this synthetic news cycle full of fake ass people to separate us from our family, separate us from our neighbors because of a lawn sign in a presidential election, then we're losing the point of the whole thing. So I think that's when you get to the white pill state, when you realize that we just need to kind of eject ourselves from this crazy system. And I learned this, and also to your point, just removing consent or just saying no and rejecting authority. I learned this in the most real way during COVID and lockdown, when they were rolling out the COVID shots. Biden administration, all the corporations were mandating shots. It was terrible. People were losing their jobs. Kids were getting thrown out of college, out of school. It was awful. And you knew that they wanted desperately to make the COVID-19 shots mandatory for attendance at public school, private school, parochial schools. You knew that that's what they wanted. And they almost got it with the LA Unified School District. It was the largest district in the United States of America, in California, and they got the closest. They actually issued a district-wide mandate for children to attend K through 12 at LA Unified. They said, if you don't get the shot, you can't come to school. And we were watching that very closely because we knew if they succeeded there, then this would roll out throughout the country. And it was a very critical pivot point from my perspective in reporting on all of this. And the most miraculous thing happened, Alec, in that. It wasn't a court case. It wasn't a lawsuit. Wasn't a judge. Wasn't legislation. It wasn't a tweet from Donald Trump or some politician, Democrat or Republican. Nothing happened except for every parent giving LA Unified the double middle finger and saying, fuck off. We're not injecting our kids to come to school, period. It is not happening. And mom, Susan, called up mom, Karen, and then Karen called up the dad, and everyone called each other. And they were just like, we're not doing it. It's not happening. And it completely fell apart. It fell apart. They were not able to implement it. None of the kids had to get the shots. And for me, that was the story. That was when you realize we don't need to do any of these things. We just need to say no. And this is my position on the digital ID. It's my position on the digital currency, all of the things. We don't have to freak out, light our hair on fire and do all, just say no. Just don't do
That's
it.
That's it. It's crazy because the solution sounds way more simple than most people would like to make it. Right. It's you individually embodying the paradigm that you claim to be about, you individually setting boundaries and saying no and figuring out what your yes is and choosing yes there and encouraging other people to do the same thing. That's it. Like that. It's so stupid. It's so simple. Like it's that. Right. That's it. I mean, another example of this, I interviewed Eric Brakey, who is the CEO of this nonprofit called the Free State Project. Are you familiar with the Free State Project?
I love the Free State Project. Love it.
So this is another great example of this, right? So at the time during COVID, I don't know now because I don't really pay attention too much to what's happening politically, especially not in New Hampshire. But the larger point that I'm making here is that in New Hampshire during COVID, from my understanding, most of the representatives were left-leaning, were Democrats. And these left-leaning Democrats tried to install a lot of tyrannical measures in New Hampshire. In the areas where a lot of people had moved from across the country to New Hampshire. So for context, for the people who are unaware, the Free State Project is a project where a manifesto was put out several years back where they essentially wanted to try a project to get as many liberty-minded people to move to New Hampshire as possible. Okay. Right. So lots of people left other states to move to New Hampshire. So you would think that because this place is controlled by left-leaning politicians and left-leaning policies, that New Hampshire would have had some of the most tyranny during the COVID era. And it did in pockets, but in the areas where there was enough liberty-minded people because of the Free State Project primarily, you talk to people from New Hampshire and they're like, yeah, it was like non-existent because all of us recognized unanimously that irrespective of what the policies say, we're not doing it. It's not happening. It's not happening. And it really is that simple. It's that simple. Yeah. So what I see now regarding belief, and I have to check myself on this sometimes too. I acknowledge it because you see the push towards this technocratic surveillance state happening. It's becoming increasingly obvious. I put out several tweets about this. When you just look again at the Trump administration's track record, both in his first term, but also in the second term, there's no real world indication, in my opinion, that he's truly fighting for freedom. And there's a lot of scary things coming down the pipeline that could be happening, right? Yeah. And with that being said, all it requires is for us to remember who we are, remember where our authority comes from. It's not from man, it's from God, and then act upon that. That's it. It doesn't require you to be belligerent. It doesn't require you to be hostile. Of course, if someone tries to infringe upon you and your property, you have the right to defend it. That's another principle of voluntarism. But it doesn't require any of that. It requires you remembering who you are and exercising the authority that was given to you by your Creator. No man or woman has the ability or the right to tell you what to do for yourself or your property or your family. No one. And the more people start understanding that and simply acting upon it and orienting their beliefs around it, the more this political theater just completely dissolves, in my opinion. And we've seen real world
Absolutely.
example of this, just like you brought up.
Yeah. I mean, amazing analysis. We're talking to Alex Zeck. I told you guys you were going to like him. I told you. Don't doubt me. I bring only the best guests into the Joy Virtual Studio. You're sounding a lot like, I don't know, maybe the framers of the Constitution and the founders. Of course, I have mentioned, I told my son just the other day, I said, I think if I were alive during the Constitutional Convention, I probably would have been an anti-federalist. I probably would have been like, I want to go back to the Articles of Confederation. Okay, we don't need this centralized government. But you know, the premise of, I mean, a lot of this is just going back to and remembering the Declaration of Independence, how this country was set up from the beginning, understanding that there's no utopia, there's no such thing as utopia. We're going to have problems, but it's easier, in my opinion, to deal with problems at the local level with decentralized governing power than it is to deal with a massive, centralized, all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing, with a big arsenal of nuclear weapons federal government. And so to me, that just makes a lot of common sense. We have to take a quick break. I want to make sure that you guys are following Alex Zeck on Twitter. His handle is at Alec_Zeck. You can also follow him on Instagram. And his podcast is the Way Forward podcast. 6 times a month. You can check out his community at The Way Forward, thewayfwrd.com. And TJ will pop that up in the live chat so that people can find it easily. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, I would love to talk to you about your rejection. I love this. This is gonna be controversial, of germ theory. And I mean, because this is something you hear, like this big debate over whether or not viruses exist. And I'm not scientific minded. I'm kind of like, to me, I think it's more about semantics than anything else with the argument, but people are really into it. So I want to hear your theory on that. And then maybe we can hit a little bit of the news of the day. We have about 20 minutes left in the program to get to all of that. So make sure you guys are following and supporting Alex Zeck. We'll be back in a moment to continue this discussion right here on the Shannon Joy Show. Big thank you to our sponsors over at Purge. Right now, this is the product that I've been using. I'm on day 7 of my 15-day intestinal purge. So this is an advanced cleanse for digestive health. And, you know, growing up, you know, speaking of our healthcare system, you know, every time you get sick, whether you have the sniffles, a sore throat, inflammation, you know, you go to the doctor and it's always either a virus or a bacteria, a virus or a bacteria. So you get an antiviral or an antibacteria. Well, when was the last time you went to the your medical doctor when you were dealing with some sort of malady and they said to you, hey, you know what? Maybe it's a parasite. Maybe it's not viral or bacterial, but maybe it's parasitic. This idea that humans can't have parasites or don't have parasites is one of the most interesting suppression or, you know, suppressed pieces of information that I have seen. And I just thought of, you know, when I first started thinking about parasites, I'm like, wow, like no one ever talks about them. But it is very true that humans can have parasites, and those parasites can impact your health in many, many negative ways. Right now, Purge is giving you guys 15% off of your order if you go to www.purgestore.com/joy. That is purgestore.com/joy. Use the promo code JOY. Join me on this cleanse, right? Again, we can't do anything about the parasites in Washington, D.C., but we can take responsibility for our own bodies and make sure that we are naturally healthy with regular parasitic cleanses. 15% off right now in your order if you go to purgestore.com/joy.
Get ready to rethink how you build and deploy your retirement wealth.
Traditional investing is dead.
Aggregated total of monies in retirement funds in the U.S. are pushing $35 trillion right now.
The capital's there, and it's invested in just basic stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And I think that the investor of today just needs to expand what they can do with that money.
So with Rocket Dollar, you can make private and alternative investments, single-family property, homes, limited partnership investments in private equity and venture funds. It could be even cryptocurrencies or digital assets and everything in between. Holding
owning real estate next to your public stocks. And I always joke around that it's no longer the S&P 500, it's the S&P 7. And dollar for dollar, if you own these inside of IRAs,
You typically end up getting 20 to 40% better annual returns than owning the same investment outside of that IRA account because you don't have to pay taxes on an ongoing basis. I have parents who have no retirement savings because they work in the restaurant industry. I love that I figured out a way to be impactful to Main Street, normal working individuals, people that it would have changed the course of my parents' lives had they met someone like that.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. I see you all on the live chat. And yes, every so often, listen, I don't often curse or cuss, but every so often, I think a well-placed F-bomb is appropriate for getting the point across. And when it comes to liberty, every so often. So I hear you. I'll clean up my trucker's mouth. But, I just get so passionate about these things. And I'm passionate about liberty. And so is my guest, Alex Zeck. You can follow him on Twitter. His handle is @Alec_Zeck. He has an amazing podcast, one of the most popular and fast-growing podcasts in the world, called The Way Forward. And we're talking about all sorts of issues. We just discussed the philosophy of voluntarism, which makes a lot of sense to me. I also want to ask you about, this is your more controversial position, and this is actually what people most often have you on their shows to talk about. And this is your critique of germ theory in favor of terrain theory, if I'm not incorrect. And this is the whole debate over whether or not viruses exist. Now, I've had a lot of scientists on my show because they were very necessary during the dark days of COVID, when we had to explain to people why a filthy rag on your face was not going to filter out the big bad virus and keep you safe. We had to go back to the basics of science because everyone was so stupid during COVID. But that elevated an entire genre of scientific podcasters and content creators. And, the critique of COVID lockdowns also sparked a critique of virology in general and the science of pandemics and behind pandemics. And so I think this is a very relevant discussion. And just wanted to get your perspective. You are critical, or you full scale reject germ theory. So let's talk about that, because I find that to be a really interesting topic.
Yeah, so I'll start high level on this, and then we can get more into the nitty gritty. Luckily, we have plenty of time with 20 minutes to talk about something like this. I'll have to come back to give a more thorough deep dive, but
you must, because honestly, I have a million questions for you on a whole host of other things, but this one's interesting.
I'm happy to.
Great.
So the biggest thing is we're taught that healthy people become sick when exposed to sick people or their bodily fluids. We're taught that is essentially an irrefutable scientific fact. I know they wouldn't claim that as a scientific fact. Science doesn't deal in facts. Science doesn't deal in proving things. Science deals with trying to validate hypotheses as best as they possibly can with the evidence that they have. The problem is when we look at the so-called evidence of this idea, there actually is none. And so I want to refer to a book that I highly recommend everyone reads. I actually have a pretty extensive book list on this topic, and I'm happy to give that to you. And I'm happy to give my deep dive. I have a 2.5-hour presentation on this topic on YouTube and elsewhere. But a guy by the name of Daniel Roitis, who's a naturopathic physician out of Australia, did a deep dive in his book called Can You Catch a Cold? And essentially what Daniel did is he scoured the historical scientific literature, attempting to locate any study that validates the idea that healthy people become sick when exposed to sick people or their bodily fluids, which again, we are taught to believe is a fact. And what he found when he looked at over 204 studies that he covers in his book, Can You Catch a Cold?, is that the overwhelming majority of these studies utterly failed to demonstrate any contagion. And another important piece is that there are several examples of quote unquote contagion, social contagion, mass psychogenic illness, which I can get into in a second, that have nothing whatsoever to do with particles or microbes. But some of the most important pieces are the most frequently occurring result amongst these 204 studies that have been done throughout history attempting to demonstrate this was zero contagion was demonstrated. And this is despite multiple methods that were unnatural. This idea is that it's transmitted via bodily fluids, that germs are transmitted, pathogenic germs are transmitted via bodily fluids. And zero contagion is the most frequently occurring result, despite them taking unfiltered secretions from sick people and injecting it into animals, despite them like swabbing absurd amounts of fluids up the noses of healthy people, et cetera, et cetera. And the other piece of context is the nocebo effect is a well-established strong factor. And in the studies where healthy people did become sick after being exposed to sick people or their bodily fluids, any more of the following occurred. The study did not include a placebo control group. The study was not blinded. Unnatural methods of transmission, like I just mentioned before, the placebo/nocebo effect was likely a factor, and the symptoms were not consistent with the disease in question. But the most important piece is that in every case, no double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized trial was conducted, and no infectious agent was discovered in the fluids. And one of the primary examples of this is probably one of the best historical examples during the Spanish flu between 1918 and 1919. Obviously, the high-level info on the Spanish flu was that it was alleged to be caused by the H1N1 influenza A virus. Estimated nearly 100 million people died across the world, and 180 to 600 million people developed severe illness. So, of course, there was something happening. There was an effect happening where people were getting sick, but we're questioning here, what is the cause of that phenomenon? A lot of people, when it comes to the terrain versus germ theory argument, misconstrue what people like me are saying to think that we're saying, oh, you didn't get sick. We acknowledge that you got sick. Well, possibly. This is a piece of it. This is a piece. There's a lot of other plausible explanations for what causes two or more people to become sick in the same space, which is a separate category from healthy people becoming sick when exposed to sick people with bodily fluids. So it's a distinction. What I mean by that is I'm not denying the phenomenon where two or more people develop similar symptoms in the same environment. That's a real phenomenon that most of us, if not all of us, experience and have experienced in our lives. But that is distinct from healthy people becoming sick when exposed to sick people or their bodily fluids. So with the Spanish flu, some other pieces of context that are really important is that nearly half of the deaths occurred during the Spanish flu in men aged 20 through 40. It also occurred during World War I. Also during World War I, 150,000 tons of chemical weapons were produced, 125,000 of which were deployed on the battlefield. So that's pretty interesting that nearly half of the Spanish flu deaths occurred in men aged 20 through 40 during World War I, where 125,000 tons of chemical weapons were deployed on the battlefield. Another important piece, and this sounds a lot like ventilators and remdesivir for COVID and of course the shots as well. During the Spanish flu, doctors were prescribing patients 8,000 to 15,000 milligrams of aspirin per day, which is equivalent to consuming 25 aspirin tablets per day. So, if we look at common Spanish flu symptoms, and I'm not making any claims here, this is just interesting. If we look at Spanish flu symptoms and compare them to gas poisoning symptoms, they're identical, literally identical. Also, if we look at some of the hallmark Spanish flu symptoms and compare them to aspirin poisoning symptoms, lung damage, pulmonary edema, respiratory failure, pulmonary hemorrhage, tachycardia, fatigue, nausea, fever, identical to Spanish flu symptoms. So a bunch of researchers during the Spanish flu set out to try to validate the idea that this disease was being transmitted from person to person, right? So what they did in a series of 25 experiments across 3 studies was expose 160 or so volunteers who were healthy to people who were sick or to fluids from people who were sick with the Spanish flu in a variety of ways. So the experiments included that they inoculated healthy soldiers with nasal secretions and throat secretions from people who are sick with the Spanish flu. They sprayed unfiltered mucus secretions directly into them. They applied unfiltered mucus secretions into their eyes and nasal cavities. They injected mucus secretions into the sailors. They injected blood from them into the sailors. And then they took several of these healthy sailors from the Navy and exposed them in a Spanish flu ward, had multiple of them go to Spanish flu patients, had the patients open mouth cough into their faces, had them talk and shake hands at close range, et cetera, et cetera. So you'd imagine, given that This group of volunteers falls within overwhelmingly that 20 to 40 age range where nearly half of the Spanish flu deaths occurred, right? That at least a few of them would die, if not a lot of them, and most, if not all of them, would become severely ill after being exposed in a variety of ways to both the fluids and directly to Spanish flu patients, right? What they found in the results of these studies were that only 3 of the 161 volunteers became sick. 2 of them developed symptoms that weren't even in line with the hallmark Spanish flu symptoms, and 1 of them developed influenza-like illness. So 98% of the volunteers remained healthy. And again, a large portion of those volunteers were within the 20 to 40 age range and occurred during what was alleged to be the most infectious, deadly pandemic in human history. So this is one of many examples that Daniel explores in his book. And there are some other examples where about a year after the Spanish flu study that I just mentioned, and by the way, at the end of this study, the researchers were quoted, one of the researchers, Milton Rosenau, is quoted as saying, "We entered the outbreak with a notion that we knew the cause of the disease and were quite sure we knew how it was transmitted from person to person. Perhaps if we have learned anything, it is that we are not quite sure what we know about the disease." That's one of the principal researchers of this study who had the preconceived idea that it was transmitted from person to person, and clearly the results failed. And in another example, just after the Spanish flu, they had a control group that was exposed to a saline placebo, but thought they were receiving fluids from sick people, right? A higher percentage of people became sick after being exposed to the saline placebo than those who were exposed to fluids from sick people.
Wow.
Let me take this a little bit further. So going into what I mentioned earlier in Daniel's book, where he talks about the examples of quote unquote contagion where that have nothing to do with microbes. Some of the interesting things that Daniel explores in his book are social contagion and mass psychogenic illness. So this one is pretty insane. So in 2017, New Zealand, a drug, an antidepressant, had just gone off patent, which allowed other companies to make their own generic versions of the drug. So a lot of people began reporting side effects to whatever New Zealand's adverse event reporting system is related to drugs to this one generic antidepressant. So they were reporting 26 common side effects across the board, right?
Right.
Mainstream media caught wind of this and decided to run a story on this generic antidepressant that was causing these 26 common symptoms. For whatever reason, when the mainstream media ran their story, they only mentioned 6 of those 20 plus symptoms. So when they're sharing this story with the masses, they only mentioned 6 of those 20 plus symptoms. What then followed was an over 100% increase in adverse event reports, but only in the 6 symptoms that the mainstream media had shared.
Wow. That's
and there are several
insane.
other examples of this in Daniel's book as well.
That's insane. So people become hyper focused on a specific symptom because it's reinforced and repeated in a almost propaganda type of way, and then manifest that symptom. Listen, the mind is a powerful thing. Like, this does not surprise me, at all. And, if you go back to COVID, remember, what was it? The loss of scent,
taste and smell,
and taste and smell, and then a metallic type of thing happening. And I don't know who I had on a couple of years ago. They're like, loss of taste and smell and like the metallic thing is basically one of the symptoms of like all of the things. I mean, this is not anything new. This is something that many people often get. Yet everyone you talk to would say, oh, well, and that was a very real physical thing that happened that they experienced. So that reinforces in their mind that this is from COVID or this is from the virus. You sound an awful lot like Denis Rancourt, who I had on my show a few years ago, as he was explaining this, and how powerful the mind is in manifesting very real pain, right? So it's not to say that people are crazy. Like, you can absolutely manifest very real symptoms that you are experiencing. But I don't disagree with you, just from my own experience, that the mind has an enormous impact on the way that you feel every day and whether or not you're going to succumb to illness. I truly believe that. I don't know what the science is, but I believe it just from my own life.
Right. Think of eating a lemon right now.
Okay.
What happens? What do you notice?
I just had a physiological reaction to that. Like I tensed up, like a sour, like kind of pucker thing. That's crazy. Good one.
Right.
Good one, yeah.
Could that not apply elsewhere when you're repeatedly told over and over and over and over and over again, you will experience loss of taste and smell. You'll experience loss of taste and smell. You'll know you'll have this deadly virus because you experience loss of taste and smell. And a quick piece on gain of function. I'll have to come back to do this because there's so much to address on the specifics of virology. I could get into a lot more on the idea that 2 or more people become sick when exposed to sick people or their bodily fluids. So with loss of taste and smell, I'll just cover this since you brought it up. There was an article that came out in the LA Times in the 1980s, I believe. And the article is titled, I have pulled up right here, Sense of Smell can be victim of bout with flu. So the article goes on to say, if you recently suffered from the flu and have not recovered your sense of smell, you aren't alone, researchers say. It can happen to people who suffer from flu or upper respiratory infections, blah, 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 blah. This is the part that's really interesting because people will say, well, I experienced loss of taste and smell for 6 months. How do you explain that? That's different than what happened in the past with the common cold. This is what the article says. These people are seeing us 6 months after the flu has passed, and they still don't have their sense of smell. We still don't even know if it's permanent or not. We don't know for sure right now, but we think there may be people who permanently lose their sense of smell after this kind of episode. And then there's other possible explanations for the phenomenon of losing taste and smell. Mass psychogenic illness, mass social contagion, which I just described, exposure to non-native EMFs. I'm not one of the people who claims that 5G and millimeter wave technology is a replacement for virus. Like, oh, if not a virus, then it must have been 5G. But we have to acknowledge that during the COVID era, we had this novel technology, novel in the sense that we had not experienced millimeter wave technology blanketing us in mass and having our phones have transceivers for millimeter wave technology. So that's a novel toxin in our environment. And then we also have the possibility of a general mineral imbalance that can cause loss of taste and smell, weather changes. If you're exposed to high humidity followed by really low humidity, high temperatures to low temperatures, and the weather keeps fluctuating, you just traveled and came back and you're going in different environments, that can cause your olfactory system and your mucous membranes to basically have a disruption. And then there's other paradigms like German New Medicine, which is a pretty incredible paradigm. And I recommend having Dr. Melissa Sell on your show. But in German New Medicine, there's something known as a stink conflict, where you're dealing with a situation that just stinks and your body responds physiologically by losing your sense of smell. And I would say that for the overwhelming majority of us, we dealt with a pretty stinky situation from 2020 onward. So there's plenty of other possible explanations for what causes this phenomenon.
Right. Well, and not to mention mass vaccination, like the injection of toxins into your body, which can cause a whole host of ailments. And the idea, I mean, when you consider, our government and how willing they are to experiment on humans and poison humans and engage in this type of research, I don't know why anyone would be surprised at all about a mass poisoning situation or an attempt to mass poison. Now, I hate even going there because then that spikes fear again. And then people get they're afraid to walk outside because they think that the chemicals are dropping down on them. And they're afraid of the 5G. And I get it. I think all of these things are real, but I also think that the body, we have a miraculous healing machine called our body and our immune system. And that any of these things that they would like to frighten us with. And I would say, the whole philosophy or study or science of virology is quite convenient for people who want to control societies and also, cull them if necessary, right? Yep. And also isolate them, right? What better way to isolate people than to make them fearful of each other on a regular basis and turn it on and turn it off? All of this is not far out to me. And I think it's actually interesting. I think we should have more discussions about this rather than fewer, but we are running out of time, which is like, I'm so bummed because I really do feel like I could go for another hour and ask you all sorts of questions. So we are going to have you back, of course. Thank you. This is such a fun interview, and your perspective is just spot on from my perspective. And I just hope that we can do this again, continue the conversation on a lot of these topics, because your voice is really important right now.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to leave with one thing. Your soul is inhabiting the most advanced technology that has ever existed. I understand there's a lot of fears surrounding AI and AI taking over and things like this and what the government's going to do with AI. You have the superior technology. That's what your soul is inhabiting right now. And the more we focus on cultivating the relationship with ourselves deeply and with our creator and express that outward, there's nothing that can overcome that.
I agree 100%. I absolutely agree 100%. This planet, our bodies, creation, just look out the window every day, what God has created. It is miraculous. It is so much more complex and intelligent and advanced than anything that Elon Musk can come up with. And I do believe that we are in a bit of a psyop right now, where they're trying to convince us of the inevitability of machines controlling everything, and the robots and the AI, and it's going to surpass human intelligence. I mean, just this morning, I had to fill in the CAPTCHA. Do you guys ever have to do the CAPTCHA, right? To verify that you're human. So the way that you verify that you're human is literally identifying the boxes that contain the motorcycle. Okay. That simple little thing that humans do is apparently so complicated that a machine can't figure it out. And if that doesn't tell you, right, what you need to know about AI and the technology, apparently they still can't figure out which boxes the bicycle is in. And so I agree with you 100%. And I think that we need to continue to reject Joe Rogan and Elon Musk and all these people going out there saying, it's the end of the human. They're all idiots, in my opinion. Not Alex Zeck, though. You can find him on the twit. He's at Alec_Zeck. Follow him on Instagram. Join his community. We'll pop everything up in the show notes of the Shannon and Joy Show. Thank you so much. Cannot wait to have you on again and further our collaboration in the future, because I think that we're entering some exciting times. 26 and 27 are going to be a doozy. So I'll look forward to fighting for freedom with you in those years and beyond. Okay.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me, Shannon.
Hey, absolutely. All right, guys. I told you I get the best guests. What can I say? It's not me, it's them. I think I just have a radar for truth tellers and people who are genuine and real and human and outside of the two-party political system, not D, not R, just like normal, sane human beings who want to, I don't know, fall in love, get married, have children, plant gardens, build houses, pursue a livelihood, do human things. Like, really, that's what we all want. And these idiots in Washington, D.C. won't let us have that. And they just keep messing everything up. So governments in general, right? So, and I get it. I know. I see your questions here. This is why we have to have Alec back on. Okay, Fez Woody, I see you. Fez is upset about this interview. He says the CIA is winning when you start to question everything and think it's all a big conspiracy. I don't think that Alec questioned anything. I mean, you do have to question everything. And yes, a lot of it is a conspiracy. But listen, one man's conspiracy is another man's 5-year plan. And the bad guys have been using conspiracies since the beginning of time. Okay. In fact, all of the most interesting things that have ever happened throughout human history were the result of conspiracies. Et tu, Brute, even further back than that. So that doesn't mean you have to be afraid of it. And yeah, we can discuss this, Fez. Yeah, Ziada. It's okay if people get upset. Dreamonology. Alec gave us good information. I agree. Mr. Worthless Eater, Alec was batting 1,000. I'm even more impressed with him than I thought I was going to be. You can't just throw toxin in as the reason. Well, I think it's a really interesting perspective, and it actually makes a lot of sense to me, Fez Woody. But we can continue this discussion. And, I think we can have him back on the show, and maybe you can post some questions and we'll have Alec answer them, and we can get to the bottom of this. Yes, I do have. He also gave me a great list of people that I should interview. Who did you guys like? Who was that? Oh, it was, I don't know. I just got a lot of good ideas from that. So yeah, don't obey. AI is not my daddy. Love it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being with us here today on the Shannon Joy Show. We didn't get to as much news of the day that I wanted to get to, but I loved that interview, and we'll isolate it and push it out. And tomorrow we have obviously Dr. Mary Talley Bowden joining us in the last segment of the Shannon Joy Show, and of course on call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden live as well tomorrow on the SJ platform. So we have a lot of good stuff coming up this week. Thank you guys for being with us today. Please remember our advertisers, the folks over at Rocket Dollar. Go to rocketdollar.com/joy. If you would like to take custody of your 401k or IRA, if you would like to move a portion of it into something self-directed that you yourself control, whether it's gold and silver, real estate, private equity that you trust, stocks, bonds, businesses that you want to invest in, Rocket Dollar makes it happen. They are helping millions of Americans take control of their retirement. And you can learn about that yourselves. They're amazing sponsors of the Shannon Joy Show. Go to rocketdollar.com/joy. That is rocketdollar.com/joy right now. And you can download one of their free guides. Also, Satellite Phone Store, so thankful for all of them. And our friends over at Purge, we're still running that deal as well. You guys have a wonderful day. We will be back tomorrow to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.